Hey there, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the Sacred Masculine podcast. And today I'm going to talk about the question of, are you abandoning yourself? And as you can tell, I have a little bit of a hat band because I was outside walking, which I find kind of funny. So the question of, are you abandoning yourself? This is a question that okay, so now this may have started over again, so I'll just start over again. Hi, Taylor Elwood here. Welcome to the Sacred Masculinity podcast. Today I'm asking the question, are you abandoning yourself? So what do I mean by that? Well, this is something I encountered in a class that I was taking by Trevor Boehm called Kill the Nice Guy. And he talks about this concept of abandoning yourself. And I think it's really relevant to really people work. I'm going to call it people work, like regardless of whether you identify as a man or a woman or as a non-binary or agender or all the other different labels that we could put out there. Like at the end of the day, we all have something in common. We're all people. And here's the thing. I'm a recovering nice guy. I am a man who has abandoned himself time and again to people please other people. And the reality of it is that it hasn't worked. In abandoning myself, if anything, what I've done is I have caused myself to feel a lot of resentment toward the people in my life that I've abandoned myself for. And those people have felt resentment toward me as well, because they've known on some level that there isn't full authenticity in what I'm doing. I'm trying to protect myself. I'm trying to keep myself safe, and I'm abandoning myself to that other person in the hopes that they'll keep me safe, and in the hopes that they'll fulfill what would be called covert contracts. Covert contracts are unspoken agreements where, if I do X, then you'll do Y. And these are contracts that one person can form and the other person doesn't even know about. Sometimes they're contracts that both people know about, but they're not being fully articulated. And regardless of what's going on, it's covert manipulation, really, because it's like, well, if I do X, then you'll do Y. It's not good behavior. It's not authentic and genuine behavior. And this is something that I've been recognizing about myself. I've been working on it, but I can tell you that it comes at a high cost. It comes at the cost of the relationships that you have in your life. And it can really hurt you. And it can really hurt the people that you're involved with because of the ways you end up abandoning yourself. And don't get me wrong, in any given situation with two people or more, it usually takes all people involved to create the situation that's there. But in this case, we're asking this question, we're looking at our end of it. We're not looking at the other person because we don't know the story for the other person more often than not. And really, it's not we can make assumptions, but those assumptions are usually grounded in our own covert contract assumptions and perspective. So for myself, I recognize that one of the areas where I've abandoned myself is that I haven't spoken my truth all of the time. Sometimes I have, and I've gotten better about it than I used to be. But there are times where I have not spoken my truth, where I've tried to please someone else. And because I've tried to please that person, what I've done is I've set myself up for failure because I haven't necessarily been happy with what I've done in order to please that person. And I'll use a good example. If I'm dating somebody and I'm always the person paying for dinner or paying for the date, if that's been explicitly agreed upon, that's one thing. But if it's something where one person is saying, this is what I want, and the other person goes along with it but doesn't fully agree with it, that's something else. And it's on both people, but it's more so on the person who isn't speaking up and saying, well, wait a minute, this doesn't really feel fair or equitable to me. This bothers me, and not only that, but it puts a real crunch on my paycheck or on my wallet. This isn't something I can always do. And this is a good example of when we don't speak up for something that we need to speak up for. It can come back and haunt us in a very significant way because it causes us to lose faith with ourselves and with the person that we're interacting with. So if you've been that person where you have essentially said, hey, this is something that I have agreed to do, but it's not something, it's something I'm doing in the hopes of getting something else, and I'm not getting that something else. That's another example of a covert contract, because you're not necessarily doing it for the right reasons. You haven't explicitly spoken about it. I think really that this is kind of a significant aspect of this work, that we have to look at where we're abandoning ourselves. Where am I abandoning my truth? Where am I abandoning my values? Where am I abandoning myself because I'm hoping to get something from the other person, and I'm hoping they'll do it, but I'm not speaking up for that either. I'm hoping that they'll figure it out on their own and that I won't have to say anything. Or I'm bringing it up and I'm speaking it, but then their response is to basically say, no, I'm not interested, or I'm not responsible for satisfying your needs, or whatever. And then you kind of continue on. If you continue on in that dynamic, like whose fault is that? You know, what I've been sitting with and recognizing lately in my own life is like how I have sometimes allowed really unhealthy behaviors, both from myself and from someone else. The unhealthy behaviors from someone else, for example, being like I've allowed that person to treat me a certain way instead of speaking up and laying some boundaries down and saying this isn't acceptable, or this is the way I prefer that we talk about these kinds of situations. Or where I have hoped that somebody would do something for me, and I've done things for them, and they haven't done that for me, and I feel resentment build up because I feel like I'm not being considered, and yet I'm expecting them to be reciprocal. And here's the truth: there is really no such thing as a fully reciprocal relationship. Like, just because someone does something doesn't mean the other person is obligated to do something in return. It's a really good thing to remember that, and to understand that, like, hey, if I'm going to do something for you, and you want me to do, and you want the other person to do something, then you might speak up and say to that other person, I would like it if you did X, Y, and Z. I'm willing to do this, and I'm willing, but if you don't do that, then what you've done is you've set yourself up for a situation where you feel a lot of resentment toward that person, and that person may end up feeling a lot of resentment towards you because they feel like, well, they've been put into a situation that they didn't ask for. And in all fairness, they didn't ask for it. So when we look at our work, we have to really be willing to take a critical eye and look at ourselves. And I think that this is true for a lot of quote unquote nice guys, is that we're being nice in the hopes that someone's going to care about us and take care of us. But we're not necessarily saying, like, look, this is something I'll take care of, and I would like this in return. And I would like to figure out what we can do to make that happen. And that's what really needs to happen. We need to have transparent messaging about our inner needs and wants and our values, and at the same time be open to the fact that that other person may not want to. And then that's when we can revise and change our agreements accordingly. That's something else to really consider. Like, just because I've agreed to something, but then I've spoken up for something on my own need and want, doesn't mean I have to keep that agreement if, in fact, like, I'm not going to get something, a need or want met, or that person has no interest. It is okay to say, well, then this changes things and I need to take care of myself. And of course, nobody really likes to hear these things, but I think it's true. Like, we have to say this to ourselves and to other people. I know right now, like I'm in this space where I'm really having to look very carefully and closely at my behaviors and recognize like, here's the areas where I need to work on, because if I don't do this work, I'm setting myself up to fail big time. And not only am I setting myself up to fail, but I'm failing that other person because I'm not speaking up for my needs and wants, and I'm not letting them know, or not speaking up and telling them that they're crossing a boundary, or I'm not speaking up and saying, like, this isn't working for me. So, what I would urge any of you who are watching this video to really consider is like, where are you abandoning yourself? Where are you giving away hmm, your sense of honesty and integrity, your sense of value? And in the process of taking ownership of that, maybe you can also take better ownership of the relationship that you have with other people. And as a result, become a better person. So these are the things that I'm thinking about today, and I wanted to share them with you. So thank you for watching, and ask yourself that question: are you abandoning yourself? And what does that really mean for you? What does that look like? If you have any questions, feel free to connect with me online. Drop me a message here or click on the link, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks, and take care.